The cream-colored envelope sat on my kitchen counter like a ticking bomb. Through the translucent paper, I could make out my mother's perfect calligraphy, the same handwriting that had once spelled out, "We're disappointed in you," in my graduation card. I'm Autumn, and at 34, I've learned that family invitations usually come with strings attached, especially when they arrive 3 weeks before Thanksgiving. My phone buzzed. Marissa's name flashed across the screen. "Tell me you got one too," she said without greeting. "If you mean Mother's annual guilt trip disguised as holiday hospitality, then yes. You have to come this year." Marissa's voice dropped to a whisper. "Things are different. Julian's bringing his new wife." The kitchen suddenly felt too warm. I pressed my palm against the cool marble countertop. "Paige? They're actually inviting her to the family dinner? Oh, it gets better. Aunt Prudence is treating her like the daughter she never had. But that's not even the real story." Marissa paused. "The family business is in trouble. Big trouble." "What do you mean?" "I overheard Dad and Uncle Roger talking. They're desperate for capital. Something about bad investments and Ezra's mismanagement. They don't know I know, but..." She took a breath. "They're planning to ask Julian for help." I barked out a laugh. "Julian? The same Julian who couldn't manage his own checking account when we were married? Apparently, he's done well for himself. Or at least that's what they think." Another pause. "But here's the thing. I've been doing some digging. Remember Grandma's inheritance? The one everyone thought went to charity?" My hand froze on the envelope. "What about it?" "It didn't. And you need to talk to Grayson about this. Soon." The doorbell rang, making me jump. Through the window, I spotted my mother's Mercedes in the driveway. "I have to go. Prudence just showed up unannounced. Again." "Don't let her bully you into anything," Marissa warned. "And Autumn? Be careful who you trust." I opened the door to find my mother clutching her designer handbag like a shield. "You weren't answering my calls?" she said, brushing past me. "I've been busy. Too busy for family." She surveyed my kitchen with barely concealed disapproval. "I assume you received the invitation?" "Just now, actually." "Good. We expect you to be there. Julian and Paige will be attending, and it would look unfortunate if you weren't present." I crossed my arms. "Unfortunate for whom exactly?" "Don't be difficult, Autumn. This dinner is important for the family. Your father and Ezra have some business matters to discuss, and we need to present a united front." "United front?" I couldn't help but laugh. "Like when you all united behind Julian during the divorce?" Her face tightened. "That was 3 years ago. It's time to move on. Julian has." "Clearly." I picked up the envelope, still unopened. "Why now, Mother? Why invite them both this year?" She adjusted her pearl necklace, a nervous tell I'd recognized since childhood. "Times change. Family is family. And sometimes we need to adapt." My phone buzzed with a text from Marissa. "Don't tell anyone you talk to me. Call Grayson ASAP." Mother's eyes darted to my phone. "Is that work?" "Something like that." I smiled, remembering Marissa's warning about the family business. "Tell me, how is Ezra doing with the company?" A flicker of something, worry, fear, crossed her face before she composed herself. "Splendidly. Your brother has always had a head for business, unlike..." She trailed off. "Unlike me?" I finished for her. "The daughter who actually majored in finance?" "I should go," she said abruptly. "But you'll be there for Thanksgiving?" I thought about Julian and his new wife, about Ezra's apparent mismanagement, about Marissa's cryptic warnings. 3 years of swallowing my pride, of watching my family favor my ex-husband over their own daughter. "Of course," I said sweetly. I wouldn't miss it for the world. After she left, I finally opened the envelope. The invitation was typical Mother, elegant, formal, demanding, but it was the handwritten note at the bottom that made my blood boil. "Julian and Paige have wonderful news to share. Please dress appropriately." I grabbed my phone and dialed Grayson's number. If what Marissa suggested about the inheritance was true, this Thanksgiving was about to become very interesting indeed. As I waited for him to answer, I smiled, thinking of Julian's smug face, my mother's pearls, and all their carefully constructed facades. They had no idea what was coming. The phone connected. Grayson, we need to talk about my grandmother's will, and I'm going to need every document you can find before Thanksgiving. Grayson's office smelled of leather and old books, a sharp contrast to the modern glass building it occupied. He spread documents across his mahogany desk while I sat across from him, trying to process what he was telling me. Your grandmother was brilliant, he said, tapping a stack of papers. She saw this coming years ago. Saw what coming? The family's financial implosion. He handed me a document. She left everything to you, Autumn. Not your father, not Ezra, you. But she structured it in a way that kept everyone in the dark. I scanned the papers, numbers jumping out at me. My hands started shaking. This can't be right. These figures are very real. Grayson leaned forward. You own controlling interest in the family business through a series of shell companies. Your father and Ezra have been essentially working for you for the past 5 years without knowing it. A knock at the door interrupted us. His secretary poked her head in. Mr. Kelly, your next appointment is here. Give us 15 minutes, Sarah. He turned back to me. There's more. I received this yesterday. He slid an envelope across the desk. Inside was a letter, the handwriting unfamiliar. Julian's new marriage isn't what it seems, I read aloud. Paige Douglas has a history of targeting wealthy men during financial crises. Ask about her time in Boston. I had my investigator look into it, Grayson said. Paige has been married twice before, both times to men facing bankruptcy. Both times she walked away with substantial settlements. My phone buzzed. Another text from Marissa. Ezra's drinking at McCabe's. He's talking too much. Get here now. I have to go. I stood up. But first, what do I need to do to take control? Grayson pulled out another document. Sign here. Once filed, you'll have full voting rights. But Autumn... He caught my arm. Be careful. This kind of power shift can tear families apart. They already did that, I said, signing the paper. 3 years ago, when they chose Julian over me, 20 minutes later, I walked into McCabe's. The bar was nearly empty at 2 p.m., except for Ezra slumped over the counter and Marissa watching him from a corner booth. He's been here since lunch, she whispered as I sat down. Keeps talking about some deal going bad. Ezra looked up, his tie loose around his neck. Little sister, come have a drink with your failure of a brother. I slid onto the stool next to him. Rough day? Rough year. He laughed bitterly. You know what's funny? Dad always said I was the smart one, the responsible one. Now look at me. What happened, Ezra? He took another drink. I trusted the wrong people, made some investments that... He shook his head. Dad doesn't know how bad it is yet. But when he finds out... His phone rang. He checked it and went pale. It's Julian. Put it on speaker, I said quietly. Julian's voice filled the air between us. Ezra, we need to talk about that loan. My accountant reviewed the numbers, and I'm afraid I can't help unless I get controlling interest in the company. That's not possible, Ezra stammered. Dad would never... Your father won't have a choice once the board learns about your creative accounting. Think it over. We'll discuss it at Thanksgiving. The line went dead. Ezra put his head in his hands. I'm so screwed. Maybe not, I said, thinking of the papers I'd just signed. But you need to tell me everything, starting with what Julian knows. Why do you care? He looked at me suspiciously. You got out years ago. Because I'm your sister, and because I might be the only person who can help you. His laugh was hollow. You? No offense, Autumn, but what could you possibly do? I pulled out my phone and showed him a photo of the inheritance documents. His eyes widened as he read. Holy shit, he whispered. Does anyone else know? Not yet, but they will. I stood up. Get yourself together, Ezra. Come to my place tonight. We need to talk strategy. As I turned to leave, he grabbed my arm. Autumn, wait. There's something else you should know about Julian and Paige. I overheard them last week. They're not just after the company. They're after everything. The real estate holdings, the trust funds, all of it. Let them try, I said, thinking of Grayson's signed papers in my bag. Thanksgiving is going to be very educational for everyone. Walking out, I heard Marissa behind me. You're really going to do this? I thought about my mother's dismissal, Julian's arrogance, and years of being underestimated. Watch me. Thanksgiving Day arrived with the subtle tension of an approaching storm. I pulled up to my parents' colonial mansion just as Julian's Tesla parked in front of me. Paige stepped out first, a vision in designer cashmere, carrying what looked like a store-bought pie. Autumn, she called out with manufactured warmth. I've heard so much about you. Funny, I replied, grabbing my own dish from the back seat. I've heard absolutely nothing about you. Julian appeared beside her, his arms sliding possessively around her waist. Play nice, Autumn. It's a holiday after all. Oh, I plan to make it memorable. Inside, the house was already buzzing with activity. Mother had outdone herself with the decorations, crystal, silver, and autumn flowers everywhere. She practically sprinted to greet Julian and Paige, barely acknowledging my presence. You brought pie, Mother cooed at Paige. How thoughtful. Autumn, put yours in the kitchen. Actually, I smiled. This is Grandmother's special cranberry sauce. You know, from her secret recipe? Mother's face tightened. She knew as well as I did that Grandmother had only passed that recipe to me. In the kitchen, Marissa was arranging appetizers. Ezra's in the study with Uncle Roger and Julian, she whispered. Something about emergency paperwork. Perfect timing. I checked my phone, a text from Grayson. Documents filed. You're officially in control. Good luck. I found them in the study, heads bent over papers. Julian looked up first, his confidence faltering slightly at my appearance. Family business, he said dismissively. Nothing that would interest you. Actually, I perched on the edge of my father's desk. I think it might. Roger straightened up. Autumn, please. We're handling some sensitive matters here. About the company's financial situation? The bad investments? Or perhaps about Julian's generous offer to bail us out? Ezra's face went white. Father's reddened. How did you know? I finished for him. I know a lot of things. Like how Julian's offer comes with strings that would give him controlling interest. And how Ezra's been cooking the books to hide his mistakes. That's enough. Father slammed his hand on the desk. This doesn't concern you. Dinner's ready. Mother's voice carried from the dining room, cutting through the tension. The dining room was a Norman Rockwell painting come to life. If Norman Rockwell painted passive-aggressive family dynamics. Mother had seated Paige in my usual spot, next to her. I took my assigned seat between Ezra and Marissa. Before we begin, Mother announced, Julian and Paige have wonderful news to share. Paige beamed, touching her stomach meaningfully. We're expecting. The table erupted in congratulations. I watched Julian closely. The slight tightening around his eyes told me this wasn't part of his plan. How wonderful, I said, raising my wine glass. Though I have to ask, does this happy announcement have anything to do with the prenup Julian's lawyer drew up last week? Silence fell like a hammer. Paige's smile flickered. How dare you? Mother started, but I cut her off. Or perhaps we should discuss the real reason everyone's so tense tonight. The company's imminent collapse? Julian's predatory takeover attempt? Or maybe Paige's interesting history with financially troubled businessmen in Boston? Autumn, Father's voice boomed. That's enough. No, it's not nearly enough. I pulled out my phone and pulled up an email. This just came in from the board of directors. Shall I read it aloud? Julian stood up, his face dark. This is neither the time nor place. It's exactly the time, I said, my voice steady. Because in about 30 seconds, everyone at this table is going to learn who really controls the family business, and has for the past 5 years. What are you talking about? Mother's hand went to her pearls. A text message lit up my phone. Grayson. Board members notified. Everything's in place. Well, I smiled, looking around the table. Since we're all sharing good news, I have an announcement of my own. Grandmother left me everything. The company, the real estate holdings, all of it. And I've spent the last week untangling Ezra's mess, stopping Julian's takeover, and preparing to take my rightful place as CEO. The turkey grew cold as chaos erupted around the table. But through it all, I noticed Paige quietly typing on her phone, her face calculating. Whatever game she was playing, it wasn't over yet. Perhaps, I said, raising my voice above the din, we should have dessert. I hear Paige brought pie. The kitchen became my refuge as the family processed my announcement. I was loading the dishwasher when Paige slipped in, closing the door behind her. That was quite a show, she said, leaning against the counter. I have to admit, I didn't see it coming. Like your pregnancy announcement? Her laugh was surprisingly genuine. Touché, though mine was significantly less expensive. What do you want, Paige? To make a deal. She glanced at the door. Julian doesn't know this, but I've been recording our conversations, including some rather interesting admissions about his plans for the company. I stopped loading plates. And I'm willing to hand them over. For a price, of course. Of course. I turned to face her. Why would you betray your husband? Especially now that you're supposedly carrying his child. She touched her stomach, smirking. Please, I'm as pregnant as that pie I brought is homemade. Julian's not the only one who can play games. The kitchen door swung open. Julian stood there, his face unreadable. Having a nice chat? Just getting to know my sister-in-law better, Paige said sweetly. Funny. Julian stepped in, closing the door. Because I just got an interesting call from my lawyer. Seems someone's been accessing my private files, using your passwords, Paige. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Paige's smile never wavered. Darling, you're being paranoid. Am I? He pulled out his phone. Should we call Robert in Boston? Or maybe Michael in Seattle? I'm sure they'd love to hear from their ex-wife. I moved between them. Take it somewhere else. Stay out of this, Autumn, Julian snapped. You've done enough damage tonight. Have I? Because from where I'm standing, you're the one who tried to steal my family's company while hiding your new wife's interesting past. The door opened again. Marissa poked her head in. Aunt Prudence is asking for more wine and, oh. She took in the scene. Should I come back? No need, Paige said, straightening up. I was just leaving, but Autumn? She reached into her purse and pulled out a USB drive. Consider my offer. You might find the contents illuminating. She brushed past Julian, who grabbed her arm. We're not finished. Oh, but we are. She smiled coldly. Check your email, darling. I've already contacted my lawyer. After they left, Marissa whistled low. Well, that was intense. Get Ezra, I said, turning the USB drive over in my hands. Tell him to meet me in Father's study in 5 minutes. In the study, I found my father slumped in his leather chair, looking older than I'd ever seen him. Why didn't you tell me? He asked as I entered. About the inheritance? Would you have believed me? Or would you have dismissed it like everything else I've ever done? He flinched. I deserve that. Yes, you do. I sat across from him. But right now we have bigger problems. Julian's not going to back down easily, and Paige just threw a wild card into the mix. Ezra slipped in, closing the door. What's the plan? I held up the USB drive. First, we find out what's on this. Then we... A crash from the dining room interrupted us, followed by raised voices. We rushed out to find Julian and Paige in a full-blown argument, Mother trying desperately to maintain decorum. You think I didn't know about the offshore accounts? Paige was saying, her voice carrying. About the money you've been hiding from your own family? Julian lunged for her purse, but she was faster. Paper spilled across the turkey, gravy seeping into what looked like bank statements. Enough, I shouted. Everyone froze. Mother, I suggest you break out the good scotch. Marissa, get Grayson on the phone. Father, secure the doors. No one leaves until we sort this out. You can't keep us here, Julian protested. Actually, I can. This is my house now. Or did you forget that part of grandmother's will? I picked up one of the soaked documents. Now, let's talk about these accounts, Julian. And maybe you can explain why you've been embezzling from the company while trying to take it over. Paige laughed, a sharp, victorious sound. Oh, he won't tell you. But I will. Every last detail. Mother sank into a chair, her perfect Thanksgiving in ruins. But as I watched Julian's face drain of color, I realized this dinner was turning out exactly as it needed to. Well, I said, pouring myself a glass of wine. Since we're all here, why don't we start with the truth? All of it. Father's scotch didn't last long as Paige methodically laid out Julian's schemes. Each revelation hit like a body blow, especially to my mother, who'd championed him for years. The real estate deal in Phoenix? Paige pulled up emails on her phone. A front. The money went straight to his account in the Caymans. That's a lie, Julian snarled, but his face had gone ashen. Is it? I connected my laptop to the dining room TV, displaying the documents from Paige's USB drive. Because these transfer records say otherwise? Ezra leaned forward, squinting at the screen. Wait, those dates. That was right when I needed capital for the expansion project. Which Julian knew would fail, Paige added. He was counting on it. Mother slammed her glass down. I won't listen to these accusations. Julian has been nothing but... A con man? I interrupted. Let me show you something else. I pulled up another document. Remember when he convinced you to refinance the summer house to invest in a sure thing? Here's where that money actually went. The room fell silent as the numbers told their story. Julian had been bleeding the family dry for years, positioning himself to swoop in as savior while orchestrating the very crisis he planned to solve. You bastard, Father whispered, the first time I'd ever heard him swear. We trusted you. Julian stood up, straightening his tie. This is all circumstantial and irrelevant. The fact remains that the company needs capital, which only I can provide. Actually, Grayson's voice came through the speakerphone Marissa had set up. That's not true. Autumn now controls all voting shares, and as of an hour ago, the board has approved her emergency refinancing plan. What plan? Ezra asked. The one that saves the company without selling our soul to the devil, I said. Though speaking of souls, I turned to Paige. Your turn. Why reveal all this now? She smiled, removing her wedding ring. Insurance. Julian's not the only one who knows how to play the long game. I needed proof of his fraud before I could safely leave. Leave? Julian laughed harshly. With what? Everything you have is because of me. No. She pulled out another phone, a burner. Everything I have is documented evidence of your crimes. The FBI will be very interested in those offshore accounts. The color drained from Julian's face. You're bluffing. Try me. She stood up. I've already sent copies to my lawyer. If anything happens to me, it all goes public. Mother buried her face in her hands. This can't be happening. Oh, but it is, I said. And now for the final piece. I pulled up one last document. Ezra, remember those contracts you signed last month? The ones Julian insisted had to be done immediately? Ezra nodded slowly. They were forgeries. The signatures, the notary stamps, all fake. Which means all those toxic assets you thought you'd taken on? They're actually still Julian's responsibility. You can't prove that, Julian said, but his voice shook. Wrong again. Grayson spoke up. We have the original documents, complete with security footage of Julian bribing the notary, who, by the way, has agreed to testify. Julian lunged for the door, but Marissa was faster, blocking his path. Move, he growled. Make me, she replied, her phone recording everything. Enough, Father's voice boomed. Julian, sit down. Autumn, what do you want? I looked around the room, at my shattered mother, my relieved brother, my calculating ex-husband, and his duplicitous wife. Years of manipulation and lies, all exposed over turkey and cranberry sauce. Here's what's going to happen, I said. Julian, you're going to sign a confession admitting to the fraud. In exchange, we won't press charges, provided you return every penny and disappear from our lives. And if I refuse? Paige laughed. Then I release everything. Your choice, darling. Mother, I turned to her. You need to decide right now. Stand with your family or with the man who nearly destroyed us. She looked at Julian, then at me, really seeing me perhaps for the first time. I've been such a fool. We all were, Father said quietly. Except Autumn. Marissa. I nodded toward the door. Please ask Grayson to come up. He's been waiting in the driveway with the papers. This isn't over, Julian said, but the fight had left his voice. Oh, but it is, I replied. Happy Thanksgiving, Julian. I hope the pie was worth it. As Marissa left to get Grayson, I caught Paige's eye. She gave me a slight nod, respect from one player to another. In the wreckage of our perfect family dinner, a new understanding was forming. Sometimes the truth is the sweetest revenge of all. Grayson arrived with a briefcase full of documents, looking more like an executioner than a lawyer. The dining room had transformed into an impromptu conference room, dessert plates pushed aside for legal papers. Sign here, he pointed, sliding the confession toward Julian. And here, initial each page. Julian's hand shook as he picked up the pen. This is blackmail. No, Grayson replied coolly. This is mercy. Would you prefer we discuss this with the SEC? While Julian signed, Paige emptied her purse onto the table. USB drives, recorded conversations, photographs. A paper trail of betrayal laid out between the pumpkin pie and coffee cups. I'll need copies of everything, Grayson told her. Already done. She smiled thinly. I learned from the best, didn't I, darling? Mother stood abruptly. I need air. She headed for the patio, but I caught her arm. Stay, I said firmly. You need to hear this part. What more could there possibly be? She asked, her voice breaking. Show them, Ezra said quietly. Show them what grandmother knew. I pulled up the final document on my laptop. This is grandmother's last letter to me, written a week before she died. She knew about Julian's schemes back then. She saw what none of us wanted to see. That's impossible, Julian interrupted. She was sick, confused. She was brilliant. I cut him off. And she had better investigators than you. Read it, Mother. Mother's hands trembled as she took the laptop. Her face crumpled as she read aloud. My dearest Autumn, I'm leaving everything to you because you alone have the strength to protect this family, even from itself. Julian has been embezzling for years, using Roger's trust and Prudence's blindness. They won't believe you if you tell them now. They'll need to learn the hard way, but when they do, be merciful. Family is all we truly have in the end. She knew, Father whispered, all this time. And she trusted me to fix it, I said. Which is exactly what I'm doing. Grayson gathered the signed documents. Everything appears to be in order. Julian, you have 48 hours to initiate the transfers. After that? I know, Julian snapped. He stood up, straightening his jacket with whatever dignity he had left. I suppose you're all very proud of yourselves. Proud? I laughed. No, but satisfied? Absolutely. I'll see myself out. He headed for the door, then turned back. Coming, Paige? She twirled her wedding ring on the table. I'll be filing for divorce in the morning. My lawyer will be in touch. After Julian left, the tension in the room shifted. Mother looked lost. Father appeared decades older, and Ezra couldn't stop staring at the evidence of his near downfall. What happens now? Marissa asked, breaking the silence. Now, I said. We rebuild. Ezra, you'll remain as COO, but with oversight. Father, you can keep your position as chairman, but all major decisions go through me. Mother. Yes? She looked up, tears in her eyes. You need to decide if you can accept me as I am. Not as the daughter you wished for, but as the woman grandmother knew I could be. She crossed the room and, for the first time in years, hugged me. I've been so wrong. About everything. Paige stood up, gathering her things. Well, this has been enlightening. Autumn, I assume our deal stands? As long as those records remain sealed, you'll receive the agreed-upon settlement. Perfect. She headed for the door, then paused. For what it's worth, he underestimated you from the start. That was his biggest mistake. After she left, Grayson started packing up his briefcase. I'll file everything first thing tomorrow. Autumn, do you need a ride home? Actually, I looked around at my shattered but surviving family. I think I'll stay. We have a lot to discuss. And pie to eat, Marissa added, trying to lighten the mood. Though maybe not Paige's. Father managed a weak laugh. I could use another drink. As everyone settled back around the table, Mother squeezed my hand. Your grandmother would be proud. I know, I said, thinking of her letter. But the real test isn't exposing the truth. It's what we do with it now. Ezra raised his glass. To new beginnings? To family, I corrected. The real kind. The kind that faces truth together. As we clinked glasses, I caught Grayson watching me with something more than professional interest. Maybe, I thought, there would be more than one new beginning coming from this night of revelations. The next morning, I arrived at the company headquarters before sunrise. The security guard did a double take. He'd never seen a member of the family this early. But everything was about to change. Ezra was already waiting in the conference room, nursing a coffee and looking surprisingly sober. Couldn't sleep either, he asked as I sat down. Too much to do. I spread out the transition documents Grayson had prepared. The board meets in 2 hours. Are you ready? To admit I nearly tanked the company? Not really. To help me fix it, I corrected. The elevator dinged and Father walked in, followed by Grayson. Both carried thick folders. Julian's lawyers have been calling since dawn, Grayson announced. They're threatening litigation. Let them, I replied. We have everything documented. Father cleared his throat. The board members are arriving early. They want answers. Then let's give them some. I stood up as the first board members filed in, their faces a mix of concern and curiosity. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, but was interrupted by a commotion outside. Julian burst through the door, his usual polish replaced by desperate anger. This meeting is illegal. I'm filing an injunction. Sit down, I commanded, surprising myself with the authority in my voice. You're still a shareholder, so you have the right to be here. But interrupt again and security will remove you. The board members murmured, watching the power dynamics shift in real time. As I was saying, I continued, you've all received evidence of systematic fraud within our company. What you haven't seen yet is our path forward. I clicked through a presentation laying out the recovery plan. With each slide, the tension in the room shifted from anxiety to cautious optimism. The offshore accounts will be repatriated, I explained. Ezra has already begun unwinding the toxic investments. And our new compliance protocols? This is ridiculous. Julian stood again. She has no experience. I have an MBA from Wharton. I cut him off. And unlike you, I actually earned it. Mr. Rodriguez, would you like to share the audit findings? The head of accounting stood up. We've confirmed Ms. Autumn's allegations. The fraud extends back 3 years, primarily through... As he detailed Julian's schemes, I watched my ex-husband shrink in his chair. The board members' expressions hardened with each revelation. My phone buzzed. A text from Marissa. Mother's here, with Paige. Moments later, they both walked in. Mother looked like she hadn't slept, but her head was high. Paige carried a laptop. Sorry to interrupt, Paige said smoothly. But I thought the board might want to see this. She connected her laptop to the projector. Julian's private emails about the takeover plan, including some interesting conversations with certain board members. 2 of the older board members suddenly looked ill. That won't be necessary, I said. Those board members have already offered their resignations. Haven't you, gentlemen? They nodded stiffly, gathering their things. You can't do this. Julian tried one last time. The shareholders have already been notified, Grayson interrupted. The SEC too. Face it, Julian. It's over. The vote was unanimous. Within an hour, I was officially CEO, Ezra was confirmed as COO, and Julian was escorted from the building. One last thing. I addressed the remaining board members. This company was built on family values, real ones. We lost sight of that, but never again. Every decision we make from now on will reflect that commitment. After the meeting, Mother approached my new office. I never thought I'd see you here. That was the problem, I said, but without bitterness. You never looked. I'm looking now. She smiled sadly. Your grandmother's portrait arrived this morning. I thought it belonged here. She gestured to where workers were hanging the painting. Grandmother's eyes seemed to twinkle with approval as Grayson knocked on the door. The press is waiting, he said. Ready to face them? Actually, I looked at Mother, then Ezra, who'd joined us. We should do this as a family. The real story isn't about Julian's fraud or my takeover. It's about redemption. And second chances, Mother added softly. As we headed toward the press conference, Grayson caught my arm. Dinner tonight? To celebrate? I'd like that. I smiled, feeling the weight of the past lifting. Ezra grinned. Just don't serve pie. We laughed, and for the first time in years, it felt genuine. The cameras were waiting, the reporters ready with their questions. But we weren't hiding anymore. The truth had set us free, and the future finally looked bright. The winter sun streamed through my office window as I reviewed the quarterly reports. A knock at the door made me look up. Marissa entered, waving a newspaper. Have you seen this? She dropped it on my desk. The headline read, Former CEO pleads guilty to fraud charges. Julian finally took the deal, I said, scanning the article. Better than prison. She perched on my desk. Paige called. She's settling in Miami with her settlement money. Says she's done with marriage for a while. My phone buzzed. Ezra was calling from the factory floor. I put him on speaker. The new production line is up and running, he reported. Workers love the profit-sharing program. We're already seeing increased efficiency. Good. How's the community outreach going? Amazing. The scholarship program has 15 applicants already. Grandmother would have loved it. A warm feeling spread through my chest. We'd named the scholarship after her, supporting young women in business. It felt right. Mother appeared in the doorway, looking more relaxed than I'd seen her in years. Ready for lunch? Your father's waiting downstairs. Actually, Grayson stepped in behind her. I was hoping to steal Autumn away. There's something I need to show her. Mother smiled knowingly. Of course. We'll reschedule. Grayson drove us to a familiar place, the small park where I used to hide after arguments with Julian. But today, it was transformed. A small table had been set up under the trees, complete with champagne. What's this about? He pulled out an envelope. The final paperwork. Julian's shares have been officially transferred back to the company. It's really over. That deserves a toast. I reached for the champagne, but he caught my hand. There's more. He seemed nervous suddenly. I've been offered a partnership at my firm. My heart sank. In New York? No. He smiled. Here, I'm staying, if you'll have me. Before I could respond, my phone rang. Ezra again. Turn on the news, now. Grayson pulled it up on his phone. A reporter stood outside our company headquarters. In a surprising turn of events, former CEO Julian Douglas's attempt to flee the country has been thwarted. Sources say his private jet was stopped just before takeoff, thanks to an anonymous tip. I looked at Grayson. Anonymous tip? Paige, he admitted. She called this morning, said it was her final gift to the family. My phone buzzed with a text from Father. Come to the house. Important family meeting. At my parents' home, we found the family gathered in the study. Father stood by Grandmother's portrait, holding an old leather journal. Found this while cleaning out the storage room, he said. It's your grandmother's diary. There's something you need to see. He opened to a marked page and read, Today I watched Autumn standing up to that boy who tried to take credit for her science project. She reminds me of myself, stronger than anyone knows. When the time comes, she'll be ready. The others may not see it yet, but she'll save this family from itself. Mother wiped her eyes. She knew you so well. Better than we did, Father added. But we're learning. Ezra raised his glass. To grandmother's wisdom, and to family, I added, looking at Grayson, both old and new. Speaking of new, Marissa grinned. When are you two making it official? Grayson squeezed my hand. Actually, my phone buzzed one last time. A message from an unknown number. You did good, kid. Julian won't bother you again. P. I smiled, putting the phone away. The past was settled. The future was bright. And right here, in this moment, surrounded by truth and love and second chances, everything felt exactly as it should be. So, I looked at my family. Really looked at them. Who's ready to start our own traditions? Mother laughed. As long as it doesn't involve surprise revelations over turkey. No promises, I said, but I was smiling too. The winter sun painted the study golden, warming grandmother's portrait. In the light, she seemed to smile, as if she'd known all along how this would end. Not with revenge, but with redemption. Not with victory, but with understanding. And as Grayson pulled out a small velvet box, I realized some stories don't end. They just transform into something better than we could have imagined. The family gathered closer, ready for one more surprise, one more moment of joy. We were different now. Stronger, wiser, more honest. Just as grandmother had planned all along,